So today we're going to learn some vector basics in Illustrator. You are going to need this Illustrator document called Vector Basics, and you will find it on the class website. You will have to click on it. It will open up in a new window, and then in the top right hand corner you will have to download it. Make sure you put it in your folder so you can find it when you actually need to use it, and when you can save it so you can turn it in. So please make sure you guys download it and you put it in your folder. Then you're going to open it up in Illustrator just simply by double clicking on it, and it should launch and open Illustrator for you. To zoom out to the full screen to where you can see the entire thing, you push Control 0 and it'll zoom out to where it makes the page fill just like that. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take a look here. We have our line stroke. I'm going to use the zoom tool here to kind of zoom in a bit so you guys can see. This is the line stroke. This is very simply a line. Then right here we have a square vector, which is simply a square that has a solid stroke around it. A stroke is the term for outline in Illustrator and in graphics design. So when we talk about a single stroke line, that just is a solid stroke line like this, or when we're talking about the stroke around the square, we're talking about the outline around the square. So if you have a solid stroke like this, you can then have a fill. So this square has a black stroke with a gray fill in it. And then you can see over here we have another path, but this has a different stroke on it where it is actually dotted or broken. Then below that we have a circle vector with a solid stroke and a gray fill in it as well. Alright, so what you guys are going to do is you're going to come up here to the top and you're going to click on your selection tool. You want the black one. The white one is your direct selection tool, remember. We want the selection tool, which is going to be the black arrow. A shortcut for that is V. If you just select a V on your keyboard, then it will take you straight to the selection tool. Now how I'm moving around and panning around my screen is I'm actually pressing and holding down the space bar. So I press the space key and it allows me to move it around. So it's a little bit easier to navigate. And then when I release the space bar, it goes back to my direct selection tool. So what I want you to do is I want you to use your selection tool and click on this path here. Okay, so you're going to use your selection tool and click on the path here. You'll notice that a red box appears around it. This is called your bounding box. Anytime you click on an object in a shape in Illustrator, it's going to have a bounding box around it. So you'll notice that the line one, it has a nice little rectangle around it. The square one, actually the bounding box is pretty much the exact square. And then here, the circle, we have a bounding box, because even if you have a circle object, it's still going to create a box. In Illustrator, all of our shapes and our vectors, we can actually click on them and edit them and change colors individually to each and every one. So now I want you guys to take a look at your layers panel. Your layers panel is going to be this icon right here. It's like the two squares that look like they're stacked on top of each other, and you're going to click on that to open up your layers panel. If you don't have this on the side of your panels, go up to Window and go down to Layers and select that, and then it'll bring open this window. So now you'll notice you'll have two layers here. You have your work area and your worksheet. The little eyeballs, this means that you have them turned on to where you can see them. If we turn off the eye, that turns off the work area. So you'll notice the things that are on the work area go away when I turn off the eye. Same with the worksheet. So the worksheet is all of the information, like the title. And that one is locked. So you'll notice there's actually a lock here. So what a lock means is that you cannot click on it. You cannot move it. You cannot do anything with it. That lock kind of protects it, and that's really helpful when we're designing, because sometimes we have something in the background or we're designing and we don't want to move that around. So just simply by clicking the lock, it makes where it doesn't go anywhere and you can't like accidentally move it. So the worksheet is locked, which is this little box and all of the text. Your work area, however, is not locked, so technically things can move around. Control Z to undo. If at any time you go into this weird isolation mode, you'll notice that up here it says path, work area. You just go back, click those little arrows, and it'll take you right back. So it happens sometimes. It just means that you're isolated into this one object. So we have this work area, which if I click here, it would lock it and I can no longer move it around. So I want that unselected so that way I can actually work with things. Another thing to take note of in the layers panel, you'll notice how we have a blue layer and a red layer. When I click on this square here, you'll notice the bounding box is red and it is on the red layer. If I'm to unlock this blue layer and come over here and click on something in that blue layer, you'll notice the bounding box is blue. So this is really helpful when you're working with multiple layers in Illustrator, because if you're trying to find something and see what layers it's on, if you click on it, it tells you what color layer it belongs to. The more layers you add, they start changing color. So if I added a third layer, it would be green. I'm going to go ahead and delete this real quick because we do not need that, and I'm going to relock my worksheet layer. But I'm just showing you how you can tell the difference of what is on what layer based off of colors. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this square, and using your selection tool, which is V for shortcut, it's the black arrow right up here, selection tool, you'll notice that you can then click on this square and we can move it around. The selection tool allows you to move vectors and graphics and images in Illustrator around. So it's really nice and handy to replace things and just kind of reorganize things. It also allows you to resize and do multiple other things. So you'll notice that this box here has a stroke that's black and a fill that is gray. Objects can have either a stroke with no fill, so it would basically be transparent, see-through. They can have a fill with no stroke, so basically the shape with an outline or without an outline, or they can have both like this one. So for example, I will show you, here is a box and I'm going to turn the fill off, or the stroke off, excuse me. So now I have a box with a fill but no stroke. Then I want to do the same thing. I'm going to draw another box and I'm going to have the fill off and the stroke on. So now you will notice that we have a box that's an outline, but it's transparent. And then we have the option of both, the stroke and the fill on. Now how we know the colors and what these are set to is when we click on our object. Here, these boxes on our left toolbar, our fill and our stroke. The fill, if you notice, it's not actually pure white, it's actually light gray. If we were to double click on it, it opens up and shows you the color that it is. Same with the stroke is black, and if you were to click on it, you can then see or change the black. So that's how we can easily change the color of our shapes and fills. So you can either click here and you can get the entire color picker, which allows you to very precisely pick certain colors. You can also put in the RGB or CMYK code if you know the code for a very specific color or the actual number code. So every color you pick, you'll notice, has a specific number code and a specific formula. And we'll talk more about color later on. But you'll notice there's 85% C, 20% M, 87% Y, and 5% K. CMYK are usually the main ones we use, along with RGB. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. These are the colors that are important when we're printing, CMYK. These colors, RGB, are important when we're looking at things on a screen. So if we're designing something for the web, we would design in RGB colors. If we're designing something for print, we would focus on CMYK. However, if you'll notice, every color right here has its very own unique color code. So if you're designing something and you want a very specific green, it's smart to usually write this down or copy it and have it pasted in a little text box on your document so you never lose what color it is. You can put that in your workspace area outside of your actual artboard. And then you can always have list of the colors that you're using on this document. Another thing to do, because sometimes that can be obnoxious, is to write those down. If you're using multiple documents, it's nice, but there's a lot of other things we can do with colors, with creating color swatches and things like that, and we can create our own custom color palettes, and I will show you guys that later on. I don't want to throw all of that at you at the same time. but I just want to show you where the color codes are. If you'll notice, each one of these colors has a specific CMYK color code, and then they also have your basic colors. So one thing you could do when changing colors is you can click directly on the box, come over here, go to the color picker. If, let's say, your client gave you a very specific color that they wanted, and then you could put in the information here. Or if you're just looking, let's say I'm just having you create a red box. So let's say I want you guys to have a red box with no stroke. You can come up here and go to red, and you click on it, and now you have a red box. And then let's say I want you to have a blue stroke with no fill. You would come over here and you would pick a blue, and you would have a blue stroke. Okay, so there's a couple different ways you could do colors. You have your colors up here, you have your color picker down here, and then we can make custom colors and make our own swatches. But like I said, that's a lesson for another day. So there's a lot of ways to organize your colors. But for right now, I want you to know how to pick your colors up top and pick your colors using the color picker. So we talked about how the selection tool lets you do a lot of different things. So if I select this box, you will now notice that the bounding box here, see how there's these 8 white boxes. These boxes are called anchor points, and these anchor points are what make up the shape. And we use these anchor points to actually adjust the shape in different ways we want. So if I hover my mouse over, you notice how this little arrow goes to 2 arrows going left and right. If I click and hold and drag, I can make my box skinny. I can make it really wide. I can come up here to this top one, make it really short. If you go to the corner ones, you can adjust the whole box at once. You can shrink it down, or you can make it really large. I'm going to do Control Z to get it back to where we were at. Another really amazing thing with the bounding boxes, if you click on the corner, but let's say I want to keep a square. Let's say I want this exact square, but I just want it smaller. If you click on the corner and try and drag it in, you have the chance of squishing your box and messing up your sizing. However, if you grab that corner and at the same time you press and hold down the Shift key, it locks it into your scale. So it will create a perfect square, just smaller for you. So holding down the Shift key while you're adjusting things keeps it scaled and in proportion. Another thing with the bounding boxes, besides letting you squish or stretch or just enlarge or shrink your shapes, is if you come to the corners and you hover right outside the edge, you will notice that the arrow is now curved to the left and right or up and down. So if you click on that, it allows you to rotate. So let's say I wanted a diamond. I can take this square and turn it as a diamond. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either take your mouse and kind of guess at the angle that a diamond goes, or if you grab the corner, press and hold down the Shift key, it will then only allow you to rotate at 90 degrees at a time. So it makes it very easy to change your square. There is another way for you to scale your object, scaling it down in size or scaling it larger, instead of just using the selection tool and the bounding box. If you come over here to your left, you will see the scale tool. It's right below the rotate tool, which is the circle one. And the shortcut for that is S. So if you grab your scale tool, you can actually click on one of the anchor points and it allows you to scale it down. Now you'll notice it does the same thing. It kind of squishes it, but it allows you to do a lot of things with this, the same as you were doing with the bounding box. It allows you to squish it, allows you to make it really long. Press Control Z to undo. However, same thing. If you're wanting to keep this as a perfect square, press and hold Shift, and it will keep it as a perfect square. The nice thing about this scaling tool that's different than the select tool. So if we use the direction tool, the selection tool, and I grab the corner and I hold down the Shift key, you'll notice that the square just goes down into the corner. However, the scale tool, when you grab it, it keeps the center point the same. So the center always stays the same. So that's one advantage to the scale tool versus the selection tool. If you're just trying to make it smaller and you're going to be moving it around anyways, you can just use the selection tool. But if you want to keep that center point the exact same, then you would want to use the scale tool. Okay, I'm going to delete these two boxes real quick. Then I'm going to show you. So I showed you how to use the scale tool. I'm also going to show you how to use the rotate tool. So I told you that you can use your selection tool and grab the corner and rotate. And if you hold down shift, it rotates at a 90 degrees. However, there's also a rotate tool itself. So if you grab this rotate tool here, you can click on this anchor point and you can drag from that anchor. And you can do the same thing holding down shift to get your 90 degrees. Or you can just do it by freehand. Another thing with the rotation tool is you can actually change the point that it rotates. So if you saw this little, it's kind of hard to see, this little blue crosshairs, that is your center point, your anchor point. If you grab that anchor point, you can move it around. So normally it's on the direct center, and then when you rotate your shape, it rotates around that point. However, if you grab that anchor and you put it, let's say, over here on the edge, it's going to rotate around that point. That is one thing you cannot do with the selection tool. So if you notice I switched over to the selection tool, you cannot do that with the selection tool. The selection tool only lets you rotate around the center. However, the rotation tool, which shortcut is R, allows you to rotate from any point. And when you deselect the rotation tool and then reselect it, it will go back to the center. So I'm going to click some undo. Oops, too far. Delete those again. So that's another way for you to rotate. Now I'm going to show you how to actually create a copy. I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees. I'm going to scale it down a little bit just so it's a little easier to work with. And then how you can copy and paste this very easily. There's two ways, and I'm going to show you both ways. The first way is you click on the shape and you do Control C to copy. Click on your artboard and do Control V to paste. And now you have a shape. And you can move it around, line it up, whatever you want. Now you notice when I'm moving it around, all these little lines are popping up. Those are your guidelines. It's telling me that right there, that center one. Oops, where'd it go? There we go. That the centers of both these shapes are lined up. And that if you move it around very gently, you can kind of line things up a little easier. So it doesn't really matter for this example. I'm just going to create them. The other way to copy and paste a shape, select the shape, and then select the shape and then press and hold down the Alt button, ALT on your keyboard. It's right next to your spacebar. So if you notice, I have my selection tool and it's a single black arrow. When I hold down the Alt key and drag it over an object, I now have a black arrow and a white arrow right underneath it. So you have to hold down Alt while you're doing this. So if you hold down Alt and you click on the shape and drag out, you have a little bounding box, and let go of your mouse, then let go of Alt, you can make a copy. This is a really quick way to make multiple copies. I'm just holding down Alt and clicking and dragging, and you can make dozens of copies very easily. It's a bit faster, I feel, than Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V. When you do Control V multiple times, it stacks them on top of each other, which could be useful or it could just be annoying. It really is up to you what you prefer. I prefer to hold down Alt and drag out my copies. So now what you guys are going to do, if you see this outlined shape right here, what we're going to do is you're going to use the selection tool. You're going to click on your square here. you are going to either Control C to copy and Control V to paste, or you're going to hold down the Alt key and you're going to make a copy. Then what you're going to do is you are going to click R for rotate, and you're going to use the rotate tool, and you're going to select, oops, okay, don't accidentally delete things. Make a copy. You're going to select it, press R to use the rotate tool, and you are going to rotate this. Make sure you hold down Shift so you get a snap rotate so it's perfectly straight. Then you're going to click S, which is your scale tool. So if you notice, we went from the rotate tool over here to the scale tool. So you're going to click S to do the scale tool. You're going to hold down Shift again, and you are going to scale this down. Now, click V, which is your selection tool over here, and you're going to move this square over here into the center. Click S again for your scale tool, and you're going to scale this guy up a little bit till it's pretty much right above those dotted lines. We don't want it too small, but I don't want it too large. So basically you're going to go right on it. And then once you have that, you are good to go for this part. So the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to go over here and we're going to select our square that has been rotated again. And now if you notice, when we do select with the selection tool, you'll notice that you do have your anchor points. That's these points on the end of your bounding box. And remember, we use these to shrink and move about and squish the box around. Now if we go over here and we select our direct selection tool, or select A on your keyboard, it brings up the white arrow. Now if you notice, it changed. We no longer have 8 boxes, we only have 4. These are your anchor points, and they work a bit different in this form than they do in your selection tool. So remember, the shortcuts for your selection tool is V, that's your black arrow where you move things around, and A for your direct selection tool. And this is specifically designed to move specific points. So if you can grab a point and move it around, but only if all 4 boxes are solid. Now if I select a box, now if you notice, I clicked on this box and these other 3 turned white. That means I have this box selected and these 3 are not selected. And what happens is if I grab this box here, I can move just one box. I'm going to do Control Z to undo that. Now you can also select 2 boxes at a time. I can select here, hold down Shift, select this box. So now I have these 2 anchors selected and these 2 are not. And that allows me to move these 2 around. So if you notice, the direct selection tool allows you to directly select anchor points and not the entire object to make edits and changes. These are all mathematically programmed into Illustrator to change as you move them around. So that way when we fill or add stroke, or and we create shapes and things like that in Illustrator as vectors, they automatically calculate how much sizing and changes need to be made to make it to where we can shrink this down. So if I use the V tool, I can shrink this down very small and it'll be nice and clear, or I can blow it up to the size of a billboard and it will still be clear. Vector graphics are a bit different than photographs that pixelate when you're using them. Because of the programming in the graphics and the math that are in these points, it allows them to be shrunk and enlarged without actually distorting the image, which gives them an edge over your standard graphics. Okay, so we're going to come up here to this line stroke using your direct selection tool, which the shortcut for that is A, so it's the white arrow. We're going to click on this line stroke, this path. Now you'll notice that when you click on it, the bounding box is not there, and that's because you should be in the direct selection tool. So with the direct selection tool, you're going to grab one point here at the end, and if you click and drag it, we can now change the direction of a line. Now this one stayed where it was at. If we use the selection tool, this with the bounding box allows you to move the entire line, but if you go back to the direct selection tool, which the shortcut is A, you can move just one point, and you can shorten it, you can lengthen it, you can change the direction. So what I want you to do is I do want you to change the direction and make a diagonal line with your direct selection tool. So that's what you're going to do for the line stroke. For the square vector, you should have your large square here, rotate it, and then a small square that is not rotated over the box on the right. Now down here for the circle vector, when we're using our direct selection tool and we select on our circle, you'll notice it does not have a bounding box, but it does have 4 anchors on each of the outside points. Now you notice when we selected these, you now have these handles. These are called arms. So arms are handles. So here's your handle. If you grab one handle, it actually moves the curve. So anytime you have a path with a curve, you will have these handles. And these handles allow you to kind of curve things, change up the position. If you take the handle, you can shorten it, or you can make it really wide. So we can bring this handle up, curve this handle some more. So if you notice, I'm just playing around with these. I'm clicking on the anchor, and that reveals the handles, and then you just kind of change the handles around. So what I want you to do for your circle is I want you to use the direct selection tool, which is the white arrow, and I want you to leave the points where they're at, but change the handles. And so that way you can change the shape. So once you're done with this, you will have your funky shape down here, your square that's been rotated, your square that you've scaled down, and your line that's now a diagonal line. You're going to do Control 0 to zoom out. The next thing you're going to do is you are actually going to use the snipping tool. Now, how you get to the snipping tool is in the bottom left-hand corner where it says type here to search, for in your computer screen right next to the Windows key. You're going to start typing in snipping tool. This is the little symbol that you will get. It'll pop up and you want to click on snipping tool. Now, the snipping tool is a great tool in your computer to help you turn in files. So you're going to open up the snipping tool and you're going to click new. And what this does is it kind of grays out your screen a little bit, and you're going to use the snipping tool and you're going to click and drag over your document just like that. And it creates an image of your document. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go up to File and you're going to Save As, and you are going to save this to your folder. I'm just going to put mine on the desktop because I don't have a folder. So you're just going to save yours to your folder with your name. So I will call mine. So put your first and last name, underscore, vector basics. So first and last name, vector basics. Make sure it's saved as a JPEG file, and you're going to save that into your folder. Then you're going to go into Google Classroom and you're going to turn in that JPEG file to me of your finished product. Make sure you actually turn in the JPEG. And if you have any questions, let me know.